Come closer now. Snuggle under your blanket and let the soft sound of the rain quiet your thoughts. Grandpa's voice is here, steady and warm, like the glow of an old lantern in a dark room. Tonight's story begins in a place not marked on any map. A little village nestled between two sleeping hills called Star Hollow. Star Hollow was a place the world forgot, but the stars never did. Every night, no matter the season, the skies above it bloomed with more stars than anywhere else. The people believed the stars had chosen their village, and that belief shaped everything they did. Children were named after constellations. Homes were built with glass roofs to watch the night sky. And in the very center of the village, atop a carved stone pedestal, stood a strange old lantern. No one knew who made it. It was older than the chapel, older than the cobbled streets. Some said it had always been there, ever since the stars first began to speak to the hollow. The lantern never needed oil. It flickered with a silver blue flame that never went out, even in storm or snow. It was said that the lantern guarded the wishes of the village, the hopes people whispered to the stars when they thought no one was listening. Now, our story is about a girl named Mira, who had eyes like midnight and a mind full of wonder. She was 12 years old and loved to climb the tallest hill in Star Hollow and talk to the stars. Not wish, talk. She'd ask them where they went during the day, if they ever blinked just to make people look up, or if they felt lonely in the sky. She never expected answers. But one night, the lantern in the village center dimmed. It had never happened before. People gathered, frightened. The mayor, the healer, even the bell ringer, all stared at the softly pulsing light as if it were the heartbeat of the village itself. But Mira didn't stare. She felt it, something deep inside her, like the stars had shifted slightly in her soul. And then, as everyone panicked, a single slip of silver light dropped from the lantern and floated directly to her. It landed in her palm, weightless, glowing. A whisper came with it. No one else heard it. Only her. Carry us. That night, Mira didn't sleep. She sat beneath her window, watching the stars, her hand still glowing faintly. And in that glow, she saw tiny lights moving, flickers of hope, memory, laughter, and dreams. She realized the lantern hadn't been a source of light. It had been a keeper, holding safe all the wishes of Star Hollow across generations. And now, that duty had passed to her. But why? Why her? The stars didn't answer, but the next night, as the lantern flickered again, dimmer still, Mira knew she had to act. Somewhere, out beyond the hollow, past the woods and rivers, something had changed in the stars, something they could no longer carry alone. And so, with nothing but a pack, a coat, and the glowing star fragment in her pocket, Mira set off under the velvet sky. She was small, she was quiet, but she was chosen. The night stretched wide before her, and the stars blinked softly as if guiding her feet. Where was she going? She didn't know yet, but the lantern's light, now in her, was still glowing, and that, she thought, was enough to begin. Mira wandered further than any child of Star Hollow had dared, down winding forest paths where even the owls seemed to whisper warnings. The trees here were old, older than time, with trunks thick as cottages and roots like veins across the forest floor. The glow in her pocket pulsed brighter in the dark, not fearful, but alive, as though it too remembered this place. Birds watched her from high branches, still and silent, and shadows played tricks on her eyes, forming shapes that sometimes looked like people made of starlight, At one point, she came upon a pool so still it looked like black glass, and when she leaned over to peer into it, she didn't see her reflection, but a sky full of stars, far more vast than the one above. "The wishes rest here," a voice murmured, though no one stood near. She didn't run. Instead, Mira stepped carefully around the pool, and the glowing shard in her palm hummed like a lullaby. It was as if the forest knew her, and for some reason she couldn't name, it was letting her pass, not just through the trees, but through something older, something sacred. She wasn't just walking a path, she was awakening it. By the 5th day, Mira had reached the edge of the known land, where the hills dropped into a misty valley that the villagers called the Vale. Legends whispered that the Vale held forgotten things, dreams that never came true, voices never heard, and stars that had fallen long ago. As she stepped into it, the mist curled around her like fingers, soft and cool, yet somehow warm with memory. The lantern's light, now held in her chest like a second heartbeat, grew steady. Here in the Vale, the world was quiet, not empty, but full of stories resting just beneath the silence. She saw brief flickers of them, a boy chasing a bird made of paper, a girl dancing with no feet, a mother holding a child who sparkled like the moon. These were wishes, too faint to ever be spoken aloud. The stars hadn't forgotten them. They had simply laid them down here like old blankets. Mira felt her own wish, one she never dared to speak, begin to rise, unspoken but glowing. "You are their keeper," the wind seemed to say, not to grant, but to remember. With a deep breath, she walked deeper into the mist, holding all the dreams of the hollow, and now the dreams of the Vale. Deeper into the Vale, Mira came to the foot of an enormous hill, crowned by a crumbling tower that reached for the stars like a hand frozen mid-prayer. At the base was a door, ancient and carved with constellations no longer visible in the sky. As she touched it, her star fragment pulsed with brilliant light, and the door creaked open, not with menace, but reverence. Inside, the air shimmered with dust that sparkled faintly like time itself had settled into golden slumber. The tower wasn't empty. Inside were shelves upon shelves of glass lanterns, each holding a single flicker of starlight, each tagged with a name, a hope, a forgotten dream. Mira walked slowly, reverently, the glowing in her chest pulling her toward the very top. She climbed spiral stairs for what felt like hours, until she reached a final room, empty but for a pedestal and a dome of crystal. She placed her star fragment on the pedestal, and immediately the entire tower filled with light. The lanterns glowed. The stars above responded. The whole of the Vale seemed to sigh in relief. She had brought the light home, not just for her village, but for all who had dared to dream and had been quietly forgotten. It wasn't the end of her journey. It was the beginning of her purpose. As dawn crept into the Vale for the first time in what felt like centuries, the mists began to lift, and Mira saw clearly just how much she had changed. She wasn't just a girl with a lantern. She was the lantern now. The stars didn't simply guide her anymore. They spoke through her gently and silently as they always had. When she returned to Star Hollow, the villagers were waiting, though no one had sent word. It was as if they had felt her coming. The old lantern on the pedestal was dark, but as Mira stepped forward, it reignited, not with the old flicker, but with a powerful silver flame that reached high into the air. And when it did, everyone in the village saw something in its light. A lost dream remembered, a voice heard at last, a comfort returned. Children wept and smiled. Elders stood tall. Mira said nothing. She didn't need to. The stars had entrusted her with their memory, and she had delivered it home. And though she would still climb her hill to speak with the sky, from that day on, Star Hollow no longer whispered its wishes. It sang them, and the stars. Oh, the stars listened like they always had, but now they answered. Time moved differently after Mira returned. Though her face stayed young, there was something timeless in her gaze now, something that made even the oldest villagers pause and listen when she spoke. They began to gather around her in the evenings, beneath the rekindled lantern's glow, asking quietly about the stars and the dreams she had carried. She never gave direct answers. Instead, she told them stories, tales woven with mystery and hope, of forgotten wishes and silent courage. And as she spoke, a curious thing began to happen. Lanterns began to bloom across the village, not made with hands, but with hearts. One by one, tiny lights appeared in windows, on porches, in tree hollows and flower beds. No flames, no fuel, just glimmers of hope returning home. Children claimed their dreams were visiting. Elders said old memories walked with them again. And all the while Mira watched gently, knowing that the magic didn't come from her, but through her. She had become the voice of the stars, and they had much to say. One quiet evening, as snow dusted the rooftops and the village lay peaceful under a blanket of white, Mira was visited by a woman cloaked in midnight blue. She arrived without footsteps, without sound, just presence, like the hush that follows a deep sigh. The woman's eyes were the galaxy, and her smile felt like a lullaby. "You've done well," she said, placing a hand over Mira's heart, where the silver glow still pulsed softly. But the stars are not only keepers of dreams, they are watchers of balance. Mira nodded slowly, unsure what that meant. The woman continued, "When light is shared, shadows stir. Somewhere, dreams are not just lost, they are stolen." A chill passed through Mira, not of fear, but of knowing. The stars had guided her journey, but now they needed her strength. She had carried hope. Now she must guard it. The woman pressed a tiny crystal into Mira's hand, dark as obsidian, and yet filled with a hidden shimmer. "This is your mirror. In it lies what dreams leave behind. To protect the light, you must understand the dark." And just like that, the woman was gone, vanished into the snowfall, leaving only silence and the next part of Mira's journey. The next day, Mira climbed the tallest peak of Star Hollow, the same hill she had once scaled to talk to the stars. This time, she carried both her lantern's light and the obsidian mirror. At the summit, where the wind sang in long, sad whistles, she held the mirror up to the sky. At first, nothing happened. Then, slowly, shapes began to form in the glass, faces twisted in longing, places dimmed with sorrow, and dreams that had turned bitter with time. These were wishes corrupted, not lost, but abandoned, forgotten not by chance, but by choice. Mira felt their weight press against her chest, a heavy ache. But instead of fear, she felt compassion, for even the darkest dreams had once been filled with light. With quiet purpose, she lit a small fire beside her and placed the mirror in the flame. It didn't burn. Instead, it glowed, warmed, and slowly softened. Out of the mirror rose flickers of shadow light like smoke, But they danced, they moved, they wept, and one by one Mira sang to them. No words, just sound, pure and old. Her voice wrapped the shadows in comfort, and slowly they faded, not into nothingness, but into rest. She had not banished them, she had understood them, and in doing so, she had healed them. News of Mira's soft power spread beyond the hollow. Travelers came not just to see the stars, but to speak with her. Poets with broken lines, children with silent fears, elders with dreams too heavy to carry. She met each soul with quiet strength, listening more than speaking. She lit their paths, not with answers, but with understanding. Even animals seemed drawn to her. A fox that napped beside her fire, a great owl that watched over her window each night. And sometimes, very late, when even the stars yawned, she would hear soft footsteps and turn to find the midnight woman once again. Together, they sat in silence, watching the lantern in the center of the village burn brighter than ever. It no longer just held dreams, it radiated them. And Mira began teaching others not to carry dreams for others, but to keep their own lights alive. Children learned to write wishes in the wind. Elders taught how to hear the stars and raindrops. A new generation of keepers began to bloom, and Mira knew her time as the sole guardian was drawing to a close. But that did not sadden her. No, it made her heart swell. For the greatest gift she could give Star Hollow was to make it believe in its own light. Years passed, and though Mira grew older, her soul remained wrapped in starlight. One morning, the village awoke to find the central lantern gone. Not broken, not stolen, simply absent. In its place was a ring of soft moss, warm and pulsing gently, like the breath of someone sleeping peacefully. Mira was not seen that day, nor the next, nor the one after. But no one panicked, no one wept. They simply lit candles in their windows, told stories beneath the night sky, and listened. Because every evening as the first star appeared, a soft glow would fill the air, not from any flame, but from the very sky itself. And in that light, they heard her voice, Grandpa's favorite part, calm, kind, and full of wonder. She hadn't vanished. She had become the lantern, the stars, the whisper in the wind. Mira was everywhere a wish dared to be whispered. Everywhere a child looked up with hope. She had passed beyond the world into the stories. And so, every night, the people of Star Hollow would sit under the velvet sky, letting the lanterns in their hearts shine, and they would remember the girl who carried the stars home. Long after Mira had vanished into legend, Star Hollow didn't just survive, it blossomed. Every child born under its starlit skies was gently taught the stories of the girl who carried wishes and healed forgotten dreams. They were shown the hill where she used to speak to the stars and the moss ring where her lantern once stood. That soft moss never withered. It remained fresh and warm, even in winter, as if it held a secret heartbeat. And many believed it did, that if you knelt there and closed your eyes, you could feel her still listening. Some said they heard her hum. Others said they saw faint light moving through the trees on certain moonless nights. But all agreed, Mira had never truly left. She was in every act of kindness, in every whispered wish, in every star that twinkled just a little longer above a tired child's head. Years folded into decades, and Star Hollow became a place not just of quiet wonder, but of pilgrimage. People traveled from places to spend one night under its enchanted sky. They brought broken poems, faded photographs, and forgotten lullabies.
they left, often wept, not in sadness, but in peace.
The village learned to welcome them with soft bread and warm tea, with quiet rooms and gentle smiles. Each visitor was invited to sit by the fire and speak their heart aloud. And every evening, the villagers would gather to share a story, not just of Mira, but of the visitors too. Everyone who dreams, they would say, is part of the hollow now. And so the stories grew, layering like petals around Mira's own, until the entire village became a living book, one read aloud each night by the stars. One special evening, an old man arrived carrying nothing but a flute carved from silver wood. He never spoke, but played music that made the air shimmer. When he walked past Mira's moss ring, the flute glowed faintly, and the moss pulsed like it recognized him. Children gathered around him without fear, and the villagers watched as he sat quietly by the lantern hill, playing melodies that seemed older than time. For 3 days he stayed, playing only at dawn and dusk, and on the 4th morning he left. Where he had slept, tiny white flowers had bloomed, flowers no one had ever seen before. The villagers didn't chase him or ask his name. They understood. The hollow had called him. He had heard. And now his song was part of the story too. Not all stories were quiet. Some had mischief. There was once a boy named Leo who tried to catch a star with a fishing pole. He climbed the tallest tree he could find and cast his line into the sky, hoping to snag a twinkle. He caught nothing, of course, but that night he dreamed of Mira laughing gently and handing him a tiny, glowing stone. When he woke, the stone was in his hand. He didn't tell anyone for years until he became an old man. Then he passed it to a curious girl with wild curls and wide eyes, saying, "Wishes are meant to be shared, not kept." And so, another lantern was lit, this time by a child who had never seen Mira but knew her well through story, heart, and magic. The hollow began to change, subtly, beautifully. Trees began to bloom with tiny lantern-shaped blossoms. The river hummed faintly at dusk. Animals showed no fear of humans anymore, and in fact seemed to nod politely when passing by. Some said the village was becoming part of the stars, gently and slowly. "The boundary is thinning," the elders would whisper, not in a scary way, in a returning way. It was as if the earth itself wanted to be closer to the sky, and the people of Star Hollow welcomed it. They built homes with windows that faced the constellations and paths that aligned with moonrise. Every corner of the hollow whispered, "We remember." Children grew up not fearing the dark, but loving it. For in Star Hollow, darkness wasn't emptiness. It was where the stars lived, and they were never alone in the night. Families would leave their doors open on clear evenings, letting the starlight wander in. Babies slept easiest when placed near windows where they could see the moon. Even the sick and weary found peace just lying under the night sky. And whenever someone felt lost, they would simply walk to the moss ring, lie beside it, and speak their heart aloud. Most left smiling, lighter, calmer. "The stars heard me," they would say, and truly the stars always did. One winter, a great snow fell, a storm so soft and thick that the world turned utterly quiet. No sound, no footsteps, just white upon white. For 2 days, the village didn't stir, and on the 3rd morning, when the snow stopped, something astonishing had happened. Every rooftop in Star Hollow bore a symbol, a glowing mark that shimmered like frost, but never melted. They were constellations, tiny, perfect, personal, each different, each meaningful. They called it the blessing of the lantern, and no one could explain it. But deep down, every villager understood it had come from Mira, not as a farewell, but as a reminder. You carry the light now. And so it goes, little dreamer. The lantern still shines, maybe not in one place, but in every heart that dares to dream softly. Mira's story didn't end. It folded into others like a melody drifting through generations. And tonight, as you lie there with rain tapping at your window and Grandpa's voice near your ear, you are part of that story too. Your dreams are not forgotten. Your quiet hopes matter. And even if the world feels dark, remember this. Star Hollow taught us that darkness is just another home for light. Sleep easy, child. The stars are listening. It was many years after the last constellation had kissed the snowy rooftops of Star Hollow, and though the village still held its charm, something curious began to stir, quietly, gently, as all magic things do. In the southern hills, where the wind used to blow wild and free, a boy named Arlen wandered. He was quiet, often seen speaking to birds and leaving breadcrumbs for ants. The villagers called him the listening boy, for Arlen had a way of hearing things that most people missed, things that didn't speak with voices. He could sense when a flower was sad, when the sky sighed, or when the moon wanted company. Some dismissed it as child's imagination, but the elders knew better. Mira had once said, "When I am gone, another will come, not to replace, but to remember." And Arlen remembered things he was never told. He spoke of Mira with familiarity, though he was born long after her lantern had faded into mist. One evening, as the sky blushed with twilight, Arlen wandered to the edge of the village where an ancient stump, hollowed and wide, sat like a forgotten throne. He sat upon it and closed his eyes. No one knew what called him there, but he listened, and in that stillness the wind began to hum, not a tune, but a feeling, a pull. He reached into the stump and found a bundle wrapped in deep blue cloth, bound with threads of silver moss. His hands trembled as he opened it. Inside was a lantern, not golden like Mira's, but carved of pale wood, etched with starlit patterns. The glass panels were clear and empty, and yet somehow they shimmered with soft light. He felt no fear. Instead, he whispered, "You've been waiting." That night, Arlen didn't return home. The villagers searched, but no one worried, not truly. The sky that night was restless with stars more than ever before. And when dawn came, Arlen stood at the hilltop where Mira once lit her lantern, holding his own high above his head. The moment the first sun ray touched the glass, a beam of light shot skyward, not bright, but calm and glowing, like moonlight turned into breath. From that moment, things began to change again. Animals began gathering without fear near the lantern hill. The stars above started shifting, not in chaos, but in slow, deliberate patterns, like they were writing something in the sky for those patient enough to read. Arlen didn't speak often, but when he did, his words felt like dreams you could remember in the morning. He said things like, "The stars are ready to teach again," and "Some wishes are older than the world, and they've waited long enough." The children followed him, not like a leader, but like a song they all knew. And as they walked the meadows or sat near the lantern, it was said their dreams grew deeper, more colorful, and sometimes real. One girl dreamed of a flying tree. The next morning, a sapling outside her window swayed with birds that had never been seen before, with wings like petals. Another boy dreamed of a voice singing in a forgotten language and woke up humming it perfectly. Arlen's lantern didn't glow with fire. It glowed with presence. Wherever he walked, forgotten memories returned, not just to people, but to the land itself. Old paths reappeared in the woods. Moss-covered stones revealed ancient carvings. Even the rain began falling in rhythm, like soft drumming, as if nature itself had joined a song long paused. But perhaps the most beautiful change came when the villagers, who once only remembered Mira through stories, began to feel her again, not as a ghost or echo, but as warmth, as comfort, as if she had never left, just shifted, becoming the very wind, the starlight, the kindness in their eyes. And standing at the center of it all was Arlen, the boy who listened, holding a lantern that held no flame, only the heartbeat of wonder. And so a new story began, not in place of the old one, but growing from it like a vine on an old beloved tree. Mira's light lived on, not in one lantern, but in many hearts. And now the hollow no longer waited for magic. It lived it, every evening, every breath. The village had long accepted that Arlen was no ordinary boy, but as the seasons passed, it became clear that he was not just a listener or a quiet keeper of dreams. He was something else entirely. A bridge, a thread that connected the forgotten to the remembered, the sky to the soil, the past to the present. People came not just to meet him, but to sit near him. Some sat in silence for hours, not needing to speak, just wanting to be near whatever quiet wonder hummed around him. When Arlen spoke, his voice didn't rise above the wind. It traveled beneath it, reaching ears that were willing to hear and hearts that had long been waiting. That spring, something marvelous happened, something not even the elders had whispered about in the old stories. The stars began to change color. At first, it was subtle, a faint blush to Orion's belt, a silvery shimmer across the Big Dipper. But soon, entire constellations began to shift, slowly, gently, like a great cosmic breath, inhaling something new. They turned hues of lavender, amber, deep blue, even pale green. And each color, Arlen explained, held a message, not a word or a sentence, but a feeling, a story too large for language. Children began laying out quilts beneath the sky at night just to watch the stars change. They claimed each hue told a different dream, and if you stared long enough, you'd remember a part of yourself you didn't know was missing. During one of these nights, a girl named Lina, barefoot and curious, asked Arlen if the stars were changing because of him. He smiled softly and said, "No, little dreamer, the stars have always wanted to sing. I just reminded them they could." Around this time, the forest that bordered Star Hollow began to move, not literally, but in feeling. Trees grew taller, but also gentler. The birds sang in tones that matched the sky. And if you walked the winding paths just before dawn, the mist would shape into fleeting forms, of dancing deer, of laughing children, of lanterns floating midair. Arlen called them echoes of the hollow, spirits of joy left behind by generations of dreamers. Not ghosts, no, but imprints of happiness so strong they refused to fade. One morning, a discovery was made. Behind the great wishing tree, a hidden cave was found, curved like a crescent moon and filled with small, smooth stones that glowed faintly in the dark. Etched into the cave walls were drawings, not of battles or kings, but of lanterns, children, animals sleeping, stars falling like rain. One image showed a girl with long hair, holding a lantern, her hand extended toward the sky. Beneath it, written in curling vine-like script, were the words, "She was never alone. The stars were always listening. The villagers wept when they saw it, not from sadness, but from knowing, from being known. And from that day forward, the cave became a place of deep peace. People visited when they were burdened or broken. They didn't speak inside the cave, they just sat. And many claimed that when they left, their hearts felt lighter, like someone had gently taken their sorrow and stored it somewhere safe. Arlen continued his quiet work, never commanding, never controlling, just gently guiding the rhythm of the village like a lighthouse keeping watch in the softest way. He never asked for thanks, and the village never tried to make him something he wasn't. He was Arlen, the boy who listened, the boy with the lantern that glowed with presence, not fire. And though he was young, his soul seemed vast, filled with knowledge not of facts or names, but of feelings, dreams, and the sacredness of silence. He once said to a group of sleepy children under the starlight, "When you grow older, don't forget the sound of the rain, the way moonlight rests on your blanket, or the way your heart feels when someone listens without needing to fix you. These are the true magics." And every child nodded, because when Arlen spoke, he wasn't teaching, he was reminding. That year, Star Hollow did something it had never done before. It stopped growing outward. No new houses were built, no trees were cut. Instead, the village turned inward. People began tending gardens, not just of food, but of memories. They built benches under ancient trees. They left little notes tied with yarn to lampposts and doorknobs. Gentle things like, "You are already enough," or "Your dreams matter," even the small ones. No one claimed credit. It became part of the rhythm. Even the rain seemed softer that year, as if it too had found peace in falling over such a tender place. As summer approached, a rumor spread gently through the hollow, not of fear, but of wonder. Some villagers said that Mira had been seen, not in form, but in reflection, in puddles after the rain, in the glow of candlelight on windows, in the shimmer of river water under the moon. One child claimed she danced beside her shadow one evening and felt a hand in hers. Whether real or imagined, it didn't matter, because belief had never been about proof in Star Hollow. It was about presence, and Mira, like Arlen, had become presence itself. And so the story grew, not in chapters, but in seasons, not in pages, but in hearts. And you, dear one, curled beneath your blankets, are part of that story now, just by listening, just by dreaming. And somewhere, perhaps, a soft lantern glows a little brighter because of your breath, your warmth, your hope. Sleep now, sweet dreamer. We may visit stars